Hi, Homeworthy. I am Captain Shannon Carleton, and I live aboard the 1928 yacht Kelpie, and welcome aboard.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Like and subscribe for more.
We are moored in Sag Harbor Bay, and to get to and from Kelpie this morning, we have our private launch siren just moored right over there, which we retrieve with our smaller tender right behind you. So a bit of a production to get out here, but alas, here we are. Kelpie is a 78-foot gaff-rigged schooner. I live aboard with my dog Andy, and we have our captain's quarters here. We have our living area just forward of that, our galley and our main salon, and forward of that we have our crew quarters. And we're going to start by showing you around the deck. I wanted to find a way to blend my love for hospitality and entertaining and also sailing and my love of all things classic. So Kelpie was the perfect yacht to bring this all together, and here we are. I studied marine science in college, so that's, I guess, where my love for the sea began, and working in hospitality through college is sort of where that was the basis of everything. It was something that I couldn't get away from, so I needed to stay with that, and the calling for the sea was very strong too, and I wanted to find a way to share this, bring it all together and share it with other people. I live aboard Kelpie year-round. We are up here in the Hamptons in the summer, and then around late September, early October, we sail down, my crew and I, to Charleston, South Carolina, where we give the boat a little bit of a break. Maintenance happens during that period, and we kind of just wait for spring for the wind to change, and then we sail back up. I never thought that I would live full-time on land ever. At this point, it's somewhat of a luxury for me that I dabble in it, and it's very enjoyable, but I can't imagine ever living on land full-time. I absolutely love living aboard Kelpie. I think I will for a very long time. So now we enter down below, and we start with Kelpie's galley. We have limited space, as you know, but we make it work. We have our plates here. These are blocked so that when we are at sea, nothing can actually fall out. If you go over here, we don't have a proper refrigerator, more of an ice box. We also rely on our alternators to charge our battery bank as well as solar panels. So this is very precious here. And we have a rule. You cannot just gaze into the refrigerator. You can open it, grab what you need, and then that's the end of it, because this is very precious space. Prime real estate in this galley. We have our oven and stove over here that we keep. Tiny, just a little mini stove, little 4-burner operation here, but again, it works. This stove is gimbaled, so with the release of a lock here, this will adjust sort of the same way as a compass would. So if Kelpie is heeled all the way over, it will, if you're standing here, look like the stove is tilting all the way over, but it is actually staying level. This makes you a very clever chef, having a galley this tiny and not much refrigerator space. So you learn to use only 1 or 2 pans max, also being conscious of water, so you don't want to create a ton of dishes. So now I will take you back into the captain's quarters. It's a bit of a small space again, but I do appreciate the height, and the natural light is amazing. I like waking up with the sun, so I almost never close these curtains. I've got my little portholes here. Not the best ventilation in the world from these guys here. You just kind of open them and do that. But these butterfly hatches, they create a really nice breeze that comes right in. Very hot aboard here on a rainy day in the summer because you need to close everything, and no one wants to be aboard when it's like that. So what I love about Kelpie especially being offshore. Sometimes the boat can be heeled over so much that you are clinging to the mattress to stay in it, where you sleep sideways and kind of just wedge your feet wherever you can, usually holding on to my dog to make sure she doesn't fall. I am a little bit seasick prone, however, not so much with Kelpie. I don't think I've ever been seasick aboard this boat, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if it's the full keel, how they built them in the 1920s, or I've also read that wooden boats have a tendency to be much less harsh at sea, a little bit the way a Cadillac would ride with better shock absorbers. I do feel the difference between that and a fiberglass boat. So now we have my little dressing area station here. Fun fact, this all comes out, and this is my engine compartment. So when I do need to do engine maintenance, this mirror comes off, this comes off, the floorboards come up. It all happens in a matter of 60 seconds and the room is unrecognizable. But for now, we'll leave it looking like this. We have my mother here, always watching over me. I have my little collection of gifts over the years from Miss Erin Lauder. She is a regular guest aboard Kelpie. Yeah, we just like to keep things beautiful. Again, keeping Kelpie very stable allows us to have these beautiful things on display and live a little bit more of a normal life. I do like to keep the linens aboard Kelpie as white as possible. Given that we're working with a very small space, it does keep it feeling a little bit more spacious, less cluttered, with the exception of my very special cashmere Scottish plaid. I have a thing for tartans, as you may have noticed when we were on deck. So a yacht like Kelpie, I do get the question often, you know, what would it cost to purchase a yacht like this? I'm going to say about 1.6. And the maintenance is, that's another thing. I think that's what scares people away the most, is the actual cost to maintain the boat. And there's different levels of that. Do you want to just keep the boat seaworthy and sound? Do you want to keep it in tip-top condition with perfect varnish? So there are a lot of variables there, but in general, about 1.6 for a yacht like Kelpie. Before I bought Kelpie, my ex-husband and I had another yacht, which we started the business aboard, and the business was great. And then eventually it was just time to find the perfect yacht that reflected me. And that is how I found Kelpie. I wanted something vintage, something very unique, something that other people, you know, wouldn't normally experience. And there aren't a lot of yachts like Kelpie in the US. There are some. It's the Mediterranean where they have that more of that culture, where they there's a lot of racing schooners and just, you know, gentlemen's racing yachts. And I knew I wanted something like that, so that's why I went to Spain to find her. I flew over there. I fell in love with this boat the second I saw her masts from far away, and I knew I was not leaving Spain without her. So the first thing that I needed to do was to come aboard and make sure that I could in fact get this yacht certified to be a United States Coast Guard vessel, because that allows me to carry more than 6 passengers. And she's got the deck space for it, but there's, because of the Jones Act, any vessel built outside of the United States after 1920 cannot be certified to carry more than 6. So the first thing I needed to do was to make sure that Kelpie could in fact pass all of these hurdles. And once I determined that she could, that was the end of it. Then I said, okay, well now I have to learn how to sail this yacht. So I spent 2 months sailing around the Mediterranean with her former crew. And now we are going to come into the main living space, which we call the main salon. Some folks will call it a saloon. It's your preference. What I love most about this room is it's got a very masculine feel to it, with the dark paneled bulkheads, we'll call them walls. I love it. Very highly polished. It's American black walnut. They did that when they restored Kelpie in 2014 because they wanted to honor her American heritage. That, in contrast with the very white bulkheads, they call that a Herreshoff interior. So what we do is we like to show off the wood as much as possible. We like to keep fingers off of it and keep it looking beautiful, protected at the same time. So we do have our little vintage finds everywhere. This space is very small, so every inch needs to have a purpose. So this was originally a bookshelf when I purchased Kelpie, and it's now basically a pantry, well laid out, I think. So all of that is utilized on our charters. There's a blend of some crystal pieces from my mother with some other things that we've just found in antique shops along the way. I'm very proud of my 1928 coffee set. Absolutely love when people are on charter in the morning and for brunch and we get to use that. That's probably one of my favorite things in the world. We have our prints of Kelpie in her regatta days in the Mediterranean, as well as over on this side. This is a favorite print too. This is Kelpie with all of her other yachts. Kelpie's half the size as they are. They have her in the foreground just to kind of so she wouldn't be lost in the photo, but that is her regatta scene. That is what Kelpie was doing when I came along and purchased her. We have our little crew bar here. The little navigation station here. We have all of our logs, passenger log, maintenance log, fuel log, all of that. This is very much used because I have horrible eyesight. I think it may be because I live by candlelight, but alas. And we have our vintage US Navy clock. Fun fact about Kelpie is she was commissioned in 1928, and when the gentleman couldn't afford to finish her or take on the maintenance, she went into service with Corsairs Navy. So she patrolled the coast of Maine for the entire war, and it was said that she never missed a day of work, and she was a favorite for hunting German U-boats. Schooners are very fast. She's wood, so she doesn't show up on radar. Kelpie was named Kelpie in 1928. She was an American-built schooner, so I was a little bit surprised that they went with a Scottish name for her. But I just, to this day, 95 years later, I just feel like it was meant to be. She is, I think, very much a Kelpie, a shape-shifting water spirit. She has, offshore, she's a completely different animal. She's a warrior. And you can bring her into shallow water and you can host a tea party. You can have crystal everywhere and you can rein her in. She's very much like a horse and very much like a Scot. Now, if we come up to one of the crew quarters, we do not have crew living aboard, although we have in the past. This is mostly for when we are at sea. And it takes usually about 5 of us. We've done it with 4. We could do it with 3. 6 is the magic number to move Kelpie from point A to point B. It's usually about a 6 or 7 day sail to Charleston, South Carolina, if that gives you a little bit of a gauge. And we are planning to take her to St. Bart's in the next year or 2. So every bit of space, again, utilized. This luggage is not just decor, it is my travel luggage. When I go to Scotland, but it's also full of my off-season clothing. And then we have the portside cabin here. Excuse me, Andy. This is usually the changing area for our guests on charter. They can change into their swimsuits in here. But again, just very great lighting, very spacious, very simple, and we love it. Kelpie is beautiful as she sits right here. But when I first laid eyes on her, she was showroom perfect. She was something, if you could reach into a painting and pull it out, that was Kelpie when I found her. I was a little bit worried. I didn't know if we could do, the volume of charters that we do and still maintain her, but we did manage to do it. So the trick there was to just say, okay, how can we make this layout work? How can we make seating? We want to be hospitality oriented. How can we make it so that guests can sit together and they can dine, and we can still give white glove service and provide fine dining on this racing schooner. But she was just as beautiful, if not more so. We just kind of put a different spin on it. I say we, I have Andy, and I just put a little bit of a twist on it, and she provided the perfect platform. It just took somebody to see what she was capable of. Our charter season is from May through the end of September, and we work every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 charters a day. They're all private. Then in the fall, we just prepare to sail south. Living aboard Kelpie, that is a very unique experience in itself. I don't have a generator. I maybe could make space for one, but I just have this desire to keep to the 1920s. I have candles everywhere. All of our evenings here are just candlelight, even when there's guests on board. It's a very, very romantic environment. And I think the biggest hurdle, though, is maybe space. I don't have a lot of space on board, and this is my full-time home. So I have to be very strategic with what I bring aboard. You know, you can't have more than 10 pairs of shoes, for example, and 3 of those are sea boots. So that's a little bit challenging. I do love to be dressed up all the time. So again, I just need to be very clever with how I make that work. Water is a little bit of a challenge. Again, no generator, no water, which means no water maker. So the way we fill Kelpie is we have our private launch siren. We have a 300-gallon bladder in there, and my crew will take that to the marina, fill it up, bring it out to Kelpie, hook a battery to it that has been charged by the sun, and that's how we fill water into Kelpie. So life aboard is a little bit tricky, to say the least, but it's worth it. Every bit of it is worth it. It's heaven. And if we walk up here, I can show you we like to do everything ourselves. We've made Kelpies lifelines, all the splicing ourselves. Her little sail ties here, which are maybe starting to need to be replaced. And if you go forward, you can see here, we have our mast hoops. All of this leather needs constant maintenance, maybe a couple of times a month in the summer, more in the winter. We have to oil all of this. In the off season, we take it off, we sand it, see if it's reusable. We do have a very good supply of leather to constantly restitch. You can see that our blocks also have the same stitching. It's not for decor, it is to protect the wood. The varnish can only do so much, and these are very important components, and we need to protect them as much as we can. I love the disconnect from land life. You know, I can go a week without getting off of the boat, and thankfully my crew helps me out with walking Andy. But, you know, there's a little bit of a culture shock when you do go ashore, let's say on a Saturday afternoon, and it just seems like mayhem. And coming back out, the second I board the launch to come back out to Kelpie, you pass the breakwall, and it's just this immediate sense of peace. And it's heaven out here. It's an entirely different world. We have our butterfly hatches that we actually use as tables. So when we have a group dining here, we have the place settings all set up along here, and that is how we entertain our guests. We have our collection of Scottish wool blankets from Edinburgh, and today we're using them just to anchor these chairs down because the wind is approaching 20 knots, typical for this time of year as September approaches. I love that Kelpie, to me, she has a soul, and I can feel it. And that's validated by everybody who comes across my decks. I hear it constantly from guests saying this boat has a feel to it. This boat has a soul. And I believe that 1,000%. I feel it when I'm going through a storm offshore, and I feel that this boat keeps me safe. I feel it when I'm laying in bed at night and I can hear every little sound that she makes, and I know what everything is, and it's like the boat's telling you how she feels. I feel like this boat has a very mothering, nurturing way about her, as well as a bit of a baby that I am here to protect. I am her steward as well. Home is where my dog is, obviously, but Kelpie feels like home no matter where we are. It's home at sea in 15-foot waves. It's home in Charleston. One day it's going to be home in St. Bart's. But I think home in general is where Kelpie has everything that she needs, and I have everything. I have my team. I have the most amazing crew. I think wherever they are and wherever Kelpie is, that's home. It could be in Argentina. It could be anywhere.
Thanks for watching. For more Homeworthy content, be sure to like and subscribe.